What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks, and today our weekly budget build is on ZImone and Dina. Now, this is basically just the Simic commander that they tacked black onto, and it turns out that's pretty powerful. Now, our goal is going to be simple. We're going to try to activate that ability every turn. On our opponent's turn, on our turn, basically losing them 8 life every turn and gaining us 8 life. Once we get 8 lands onto the battlefield, this is not going to be a hard task to do. All we have to do is make sure we're untapping her on our opponent's turn, which we have several ways to do. Additionally, we have some cards in the deck that are just going to trigger that ability every turn really consistently. And finally, if we don't go infinite, we'll create a massive board state with tokens to end the game out. If that sounds like a deck tech you're into, let's get into it. First, I'd like to cover some solid synergies. We have Joriel, Gixian Puppeteer, and Min Wiley. These are all going to trigger the same time our commander triggers. Joriel can be a solid game ender on top of just giving us a token that we can sacrifice every turn. Gixian Puppeteer is going to double up on that life loss, effectively making it to where we can cause our opponents to lose 16 life a turn, which can get insane pretty fast, and when it dies, we're going to get some value off of it as well. Min Wiley is going to be super solid. We can put lands straight into play with her on top of just creatures. We can get a massive board state of illusions pretty quickly with this deck. Okay, let's get into how we're going to consistently trigger that first ability so everybody's losing life and we're gaining life. Tefari's Ageless Insight. This is just going to make it to where whenever we draw a card, we'll draw 2 cards instead. Now every time we draw a card, we're definitely setting off that ability. All we got to do is tap ZImone and boom, we get that trigger. Moldervine Reclamation, another card, right? We tap ZImone, sacrifice a creature, draw a card, and then Moldervine Reclamation is going to draw us a card. Boom, we set off the ability. Krav, the Unredeemed. For 1 mana, we can sacrifice 2 creatures and set off that ability. That we can do pretty consistently. Smothering Abomination. This one has the same energy as Moldervine Reclamation, right? We're sacrificing a creature with Simone and Dina, and then we're getting our 2 cards per turn to set off that ability. Sire of Stagnation. Now every time our opponents put a land into play, we're drawing 2 cards. That's definitely going to set her off pretty consistently. Weatherlight Completed is another one that's going to draw us a card whenever we sacrifice a creature, as long as we get enough counters on it, which is not going to be very difficult in this deck. And again, that's going to set off the first ability. Notion Thief. While this one isn't very nice, it can definitely catch our opponents off guard and draw us a lot of cards on their turn. Arcanus of Omnipotent. Now we can just tap this guy, draw 3 cards, and that's going to set off that first ability. We do run a lot of untappers in the deck as well. Quirion Ranger and Scribe Ranger are the best of those, right? Now we're just returning a forest to our hand and untapping our commander every turn. Additionally, we just get to put that forest right back into play to return it back to our hand next turn. This synergy gets crazy. Seeker of Skybreak and Cure's Follower are just solid untap a creature, right? Now we have stuff that's a little more inefficient with Niblis of the Breath, but 1 mana to go ahead and sacrifice a creature, draw a card, and put a land into play is definitely worth it. Lastly, we do run Quest of Renewal. That way we can untap all of our creatures every turn and do this really consistently, and honestly the deck just takes off from there. Skull Clamp is another solid card that can set off the ability, but not consistently, right? Since you can't equip at instant speed, but it will be good for 1 turn at least. Let's talk about the insane synergy this commander has with Landfall, right? As long as we have Retreat to Coralhelm on the battlefield and something that creates a token whenever land enters the battlefield, like a Scute Swarm or a Rampaging Baloth, now we can go ahead and draw our entire deck. Now we will need to make sure we do have a land to put into play every activation she has, which can be kind of, you know, a hoop to jump through, but not when we have bounce lands, because we can just bounce the land back to our hand and play that one again, getting us an infinite amount of landfall triggers, drawing our entire deck, and basically winning the game from there. Abundance is also a super solid card in the deck because it's going to make sure we're always putting a land into play with her ability, right? The first thing says draw a card, and then you're going to put a land into play. Well, we can make sure that that card we draw with her ability is a land and then throw it into play. Super simple and really synergistic. Tatiova Benthic Druid also makes an appearance just for some more card draw and Tireless Provisioner for that ramp. Let's move on to the core of the deck. We have Blossoming Bogbeast. This is going to give us a solid +4 and trample every turn because Bogbeast is going to go ahead and gain us 2 life, while our commander will also gain us 2 life. Kira the Boundless Sky. Not only can this search up some lands, but it can also just start making some pretty massive creatures if that's what we need to do. Champion of Liamholt is going to make sure our board is unblockable for all intensive purposes. Eternal Witness, super solid for returning stuff back to our graveyard. Nylea's Intervention is going to throw lands into our hand, which is not very good, except for when you're running a commander like this. Creeping Renaissance response returns all permanents of chosen permanent type back to our hand. Super solid and really flexible. Conduit of Worlds is going to give us access to our graveyard and let us play lands from our graveyard. But honestly, we just need this to bring back our key pieces from our graveyard to our hand. Genesis is in there for the same reason, right? Once this guy is in the graveyard, it's going to give us access to all of our creatures. Uvenwald Oddity. This is how we're going to end the game, right? Because if we draw our entire deck, we can't do anything because we don't have haste. Well, Uvenwald Oddity can make it to where all of our creatures have haste, and the steep mana cost is not going to be an issue because all of our lands will be onto the battlefield. I did want to include Lab Maniac, but he was a little over budget, so we stick with what we got here. Now let's talk about that massive board state we can create. Ominous Sea is super solid because we can consistently set this off once a turn. Getting us an 8/8 for free every turn is pretty solid. Chasm Skulker, this is going to literally just obliterate the blue player because this guy's going to have a lot of counters on him with the amount of cards we draw. Tyrannid Harridan, I really like this guy. He creates a massive board state quick. It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, and then it's gonna be pretty hard to stop. Termagant Swarm, this one you cast it for 5, it replaces itself, and then when it dies you get an instant board state. Hooded Hydra isn't as good, but also makes an appearance because it's just fodder for our commander to sacrifice while creating a really good board state, right? Arasta of the Endless Web. This one, I mean, everybody's casting those instant and sorcery spells, so there's a pretty good chance we're going to have a lot of protection. Somebody's going to be trying to gun for us because honestly, 8 life a turn can get pretty scary pretty fast, so the more protection we have, the better. Giant Adaphage. This one, another one that gets out of control really quickly, right? It's like Tyrannid Harridan, but instead of 1/1 flyers, you're getting, 7/7s. Pretty fair. Turvagon, this one, super solid as well, replaces itself. I love that Ravenous ability, and whenever it deals combat damage, you're just gonna create an instant board state. The Unclean One, synergies is really good with our commander, right? Because our life total is probably always gonna be more than our opponent's, 9 times out of 10. He also does contribute to that life loss while creating a board state, so that gives us sack fodder, and honestly, it works pretty well in the deck. Moving on to ramp, we've got your standard stuff. Secure, Tribe Elder, Mr. O Reliable, Nature's Lure. Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are going to be super solid in this deck because they're going to get you a land into your hand that you can put into play with your commander. So it's basically going to ramp you 2 lands instead of 1. Rampant Growth also makes an appearance. Incubation Druid is one of my favorite mana dorks because you can get it to where it's tapping for 3 mana, which is super solid with all of the untappers that we're running in the deck. Jahara is going to make it to where we can tap those creature tokens for mana, which is going to be super solid. We also run all of the signets. Not only are they super cheap, but they're super efficient at what they do. Let's get into removal. We have Beast Within, a solid card that just gets rid of any permanent. Siren Stormtamer can ensure that your board's safe unless they use a board wipe. Counterspell, just super solid. We don't want our stuff to get destroyed or our opponents to win. Negate, kind of the same thing there, right? Reclamation Sage is going to get rid of any of those pesky artifacts or enchantments. And then we have Fade from History. I really like this card. It's super budget and super effective. It's like a budget Bane of Progress. Amphin Mutineer is super solid because it does exile, so that's really notable. Additionally, it can just come back with that Encore ability to destroy more creatures. Azuri's Predation, solid against those token strategies, right? If someone's going wide with a lot of 1/1s, now we've got a lot of 4/4s and their board's gone. River's Rebuke. Now, I know this isn't Cyclonic Rift, but honestly, Cyclonic Rift is $40 and this one's really budget. Additionally, 9 times out of 10, you use a Cyclonic Rift because one player is the problem. So this will just throw that one player to the Stone Age and you can make some deals with your other opponents while you do that. And that's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I really like this one. This one turned out to be pretty powerful, even though it's a budget build, which is what I try to do with these budget builds. Let me know if you think I succeeded. As always, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I'll see you in the next one.